start. And I just need to do some social media stuff. There you go.
This is a moment there he starts the audio, but in black and white. So whenever we say it's heard by the world, get the idea that we are not really doing it. So there we have it.
I just need to share some stuff on social media.
We are doing stuff on
This is
social media.
This is actually when people see that is a true live. It's not. Where do I have it? Shared to a page. There you go. It's not recorded. It's not a recorded session right now.
Hey, this looks good.
Where is it? There you go. Here it is. I'm done here, and I'm done here.
Is the master button pusher. Victor is the tasked with press all the right buttons.
I'm trying to do the talk, and then afterwards to go and look at the chat and questions. I can't. I'm no good at doing that kind of two things at once. So.
Well, the thing is, because I'm doing a bunch of stuff at the same time, it's really difficult to. So I actually have a script that checks the Restream platform, checks if I have the proper kind of tablet with the controls for the scenes and topics that need to be changed. Everything, if the guest is on, if we have audio. Sometimes I forget my own audio, so sometimes I have people saying I don't have an audio after 5 minutes of conversation, which is kind of interesting. I have someone posting on a comment, Vito doesn't have an audio. Oh, perfect, good. Okay. Sometimes these things happen. It's just which is just good. Also, we also because we usually had some background music, some 80s synth pop music, where it had people complaining about that music, which is kind of fun. We listen to our audience comments, all of them, and we try to accommodate whatever.
Okay, Vito, don't worry. Becky in the 80s had the girlfriend and chewing gum and walk at the same time. You're doing great, man. Doing great. We love you. Not in the same way I love my girlfriend, but you guys fun.
Sure. Let's keep it that way.
Yes. So
good.
Are we good to go?
Almost just one more minute just to say hello to our audience.
Hello.
There we go.
Our audience.
It's already there.
Actually says hello.
Audio is okay. Oh, audio is okay, but it is right now. It should be okay. Right now. Okay, cool. Right. Can we start?
Richard, are you being held ransom?
Being held at ransom?
Yes, we're being held for ransom. Your background looks like you were kidnapped. I was expecting you to be holding a newspaper.
It's my corner. I just like to chill out.
Oh, okay.
I've seen waterboarding kind of places looking good, better than the corner that you have there, but that's okay. But at least you have a good light, and there's some good light. Yes.
The Elgato.
Ah, there you go. Are you a streamer now, or you on Twitch and stuff?
No, not at all. No, I'm just keep myself to myself mostly. But it's
sorry, I was twitching.
No, I tend to do a lot less of the public talking than I used to. Not for any particular reason. It's just I tend to be so busy doing crafting a lot of the internal stuff so that other people can go and talk about it rather than doing it myself.
Good. Right. So shall we start this? I'm going to start this. Okay, cool. So, hi everyone. Welcome to Tech Talks London, episode number 33. Today we have Richard Munro, and maybe he can introduce himself. Who is he? What kind of stuff has he been doing? And Richard, can you just introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Yeah, sure. Great to be here. So Richard Munro, currently work for VMware, known Vito a while. Kind of my main interest areas have been for the past 8 years or so has been cloud transformation, and by that I mean everything to do with transformation. So not just which technologies are used, but kind of people, process, just really looking at how do businesses transform themselves using technology. So that's kind of my interest area. When it comes to being a technologist, I'm a slightly weird mix in that I do like technology, but the time I really love it is when it's practical to use. So I'm not one of these people who plays with technology for the hell of it. I like to understand what it's going to change, what it's going to do, and that's when I get interested. So yeah, that's me.
What really interests you nowadays? Since we are in the mid, well, still in the pandemic, and there's not a lot of new technology around, I would suspect. Is there anything that keeps your attention going nowadays?
It's for me, I think it's one of the biggest times of change that we've ever had. And actually, with the pandemic, I think we're seeing like 5 years worth of transformation done in a few months. Everyone's pressing the go button when they didn't have a compelling reason to before. But now there's no choice. You have to change because everything's changed. And so, you've got that whole kind of macrocosm of just everyone rushing ahead with this transformation, which by the way is awesome. It's overdue. So it's great to see. And then at the same time, we've got these foundational platform shifts going on, everything from kind of networking and edge to the evolutions in AI, the evolutions in different types of cloud services. It's staggering just how much is changing, and it's changing really, really fast. So yeah, there's plenty to keep me interested at the moment.
Good. Anything in particular that we should pay attention at VMware?
VMware is all about, it's funny because if you go back a few years, nobody was really using terms like hybrid cloud or multi-cloud. And there was this kind of disconnect between applications and cloud technologies and things to support the apps. And, as people have got real about it and stopped kind of, doing strategy by PowerPoint or meme copying, everyone's kind of realized that now actually we've got to do everything all at once. And that's really VMware's, reason to exist. It's kind of what we've always done. And I think it's, from a VMware's perspective, it's a wonderful time because we've been building this model. We thought this was going to be the landscape that we're all going to live in. And we've been building this model for, the last 6-7 years. So, we've got the capabilities, and it's great to see them coming to the market just when customers really need them. So for VMware, it's all about, most people, they know our virtualization capabilities, our infrastructure stuff, but they don't know the services side necessarily. The fact that, we actually accelerate your ability to use AWS, Azure, Google, and so on. We have a mission to do that, to help customers use anything they want. A lot of people don't know about the application portfolio we now have, which is pretty market leading in itself. And you put those things together, apps and cloud, they're just two sides of the same coin. You can't do one unless you're really competent in the other. And that's where VMware plays. It's right in that centerpiece. So it's a really good time. It's exciting to work for the company because, like I say, we've been building this for a long time, and it's really helping people now. So that's great.
You were talking about the whole transformation because this is one of the most interesting periods, well, for the past whatever decade or whatever that I remember working in technology for the past 20 years, give or take, because it's a lot of transformation that needs to happen at the same time. People working from home, companies need to transform their business, sometimes need to pivot to another stuff. Mostly, if you have kind of your own data center, we have this kind of approach of people going to the cloud. They want to go even further to the cloud or faster to the cloud, but they still have their own data center sometimes at home, or they have this kind of a hybrid capability. And I always saw VMware as the kind of the middle ground to create this kind of capability from whatever you have in-house or within data center, and then expand that to the cloud. But you right now, for the past years, give or take, you've been active with partnership with Azure and AWS, right? When it comes to capability in the cloud.
Yeah, I mean, we have many customers who've never touched vSphere. When it comes to building So one of my pet subjects at the moment is establishing like a cloud center of excellence. So how do I set up my ability to use any sort of cloud service? How do I how do I kind of implement all the controls and enablers that I need to really leverage those services in as fast and secure a way as possible? So we're talking financial, operational, security, of course. How do I keep up with the pace of change? And what's my new operating model look like to live in that world? And we've just got some amazing capabilities in that, and I love working with customers on those, because it's just a whole new area that nobody really knows how to do. And it's lovely that we've actually got a model. We work a lot with the broader community in a very kind of hands-off sense. We try and nurture what the conceptual best practice is for a cloud center of excellence. And if you look at our acquisitions like Cloud Health and some of our in-house developed services like Secure State, again, those things have been built for a long time, recognizing that this was the state that everyone's going to reach. So yeah, we absolutely, it's essential, in fact, that you have proper cloud capability in your data center. And most people will still keep data center, but where else you need it? You need it at edge. You need it at those like thick edges, which are just dark sites, small data centers effectively. You need it at thin edges, which could be anything from an ambulance to a remote worker. And all these things tie together. We're talking at the moment about people's ability to react to the pandemic and to, one, get through it, but two, to say, how can I actually flip this to make it positive for me? We call it establishing yourself as future ready. And there's 3 areas you need to be future ready. And by that, I pretty much mean use whatever it is you need to use to get the job done. So you need a future ready workforce, right? And that's been a really, really big deal for people. I know it's on our list today to chat about, actually. I'm not doing it from the company perspective today. Mm-hmm. But you need a future ready workforce, which is, you don't have like an office worker and a desktop worker, and it could be anyone using any work style from any place. And they may change like that. It may suddenly change, and that person now needs to access and work in a different way. So future ready workforce, you need future ready cloud. You need to be able to use any cloud services or technologies, and you need to be future ready with your apps. Same statement, you need to be able to use any app technology in an optimized, secure, efficient way. So I think it's about this is a fantastic chance, while people are transforming out of necessity, to actually implement a capability to live in the world we all need to live in, which is running something of everything to maximize business advantage.
Good. Any specific work that you guys do over there with AI that you want to mention?
Yeah. We've got a lot of AI embedded in the technologies. It's a big deal for us, actually. So we use a lot of AI embedded in terms of how we automate our operations, but also how we govern and control security threats. So both of those models, when you see all these big news stories like, this bank got breached, or this massive company who does a lot of online services had an S3 bucket open or something like that, it's very easy to turn around and think, silly customers, they just weren't giving it enough attention. That's just not true. It's just like the pace of change in an evolution for services that are cloud enabled, and this includes those on-prem that are proper cloud, is 5, 6, 7 times faster, and has bigger scale than those that we've traditionally managed in the data center. And it's just people can't keep up with the pace of change. So if you want to keep up with the pace of change, then the 2 things you need are tremendous tools for automation, and you need intelligence to help you make the decisions and automate the decisions. So a lot of that intelligence we're building into those capabilities. And obviously AI is just something that just appears across the spectrum of everything we're trying to do now.
Good. That's good, because that's kind of my segue for the first topic. So that's why I asked. Good. So maybe we should go to the first topic. After this kind of introduction of you and also VMware and the kind of stuff that we've been doing there, For our audience, I send always kind of snip of the news that we're going to discuss, some selected by me, and we can have your thoughts and your opinion outside of VMware, just as you. It's not coordinated with anyone. It's just exactly. This is not the company view. It's just your view. So the first topic today is about GPT-3. And for people that don't know what that thing is, so it's an artificial intelligent research lab from OpenAI that has more parameters than the previous version, which is GPT-2, and it gives kind of access to an API that people can put some data, some models there. We can go from, I'm just trying to summarize most of the stuff so that people don't know AI, try to make sense out of this. So it's so it can generate code and syntax that people can build stuff out of it. Bottom line, and it's better than the previous version, but it also has better capability when it comes to memory, when it comes to search on text, and also it has better data sets so that we can train the whole engine of AI in a faster way. But bottom line, GPT-3 is out there, and it took Twitter by storm because there's a lot of people talking about this on the Twitter, and apparently because everyone is excited with this new capability, and because it's faster, as I described, it has this kind of new model. Do you think, Richard, that all of these new capabilities around OpenAI and AI, and also this new model, this new platform like the GPT-3, is going to really accelerate the way that we deal with AI, or the way that AI is being developed? Are we going on the right way, or do you think that we are going too fast, as probably many people would kind of put out there and say, well, we should slow down a bit on AI? Do you think it's the opposite? We should accelerate, or should we slow down, or is this new model a good thing that appeared now?
Well, I mean, I think there's some big questions in there, right? And the discussion for that could take days, in my view. It's such a big topic. I mean, for starters, it's very impressive. Like I would say though that what we're seeing, I don't think it's a revolution from the previous version, but it's a significant evolution. I think one of the biggest things about what this has done is it's really so one, it's just got this unimaginable scale now. As you mentioned, these massive data sets and everything that go with it. It can learn very, very quickly. So everything is just scaled with it, which is just very impressive in its own right. But I think what's changing is it's really reached a tipping point, because it has those capabilities. It's reached a tipping point of accessibility. So previously, if you wanted to do anything in this space, you probably needed to be, a bit of an AI expert, and you needed to kind of invest a lot of time, and it would take significant time to kind of pull back the results of what you're working on. I think what changes with this, and it's interesting seeing it on Twitter. The reason people are getting excited is because they've kind of jumped on it and they've produced something, and that's really interesting because AI itself, for me, is still really, really in its infancy. And this, I don't know what you describe this as. It's a mix of NLP and ML and deep learning. It's probably a mix of a bit of everything going on there. But the technology itself, going back to how I describe myself, yes, that's all very interesting. But at what point can it be put to kind of quite extraordinary use? And I don't mean, okay, this is now really capable for a specific purpose. I mean, at what point does it really start turning into a platform that lots of people can just come to and start creating higher order services. I've got an idea, let's try that, and it's easy for them to do that. That's when things take off. So I think, this probably will be the start of an explosion of more people coming up with AI-centric use cases because of its existence. And I think it is down to the fact that it's now reached that point where it's effectively democratizing anyone's ability to start creating on this, with this particular AI basis. I would say, that's awesome, because I love innovation, and that's what it's basically going to spur. But it is effectively scaling something and it will scale the good and the bad. So if you think about it, we just talked about how this has now reached a point where people can just go get creative. By the way, I think one of the big things for this will be its impact on no code. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a huge explosion area, and clearly this capability should, in my mind, accelerate things like no code. But if you also think of some of the other challenges we have, we're well aware of the challenges with bias in models and so many stories around those kind of things. But also, if you think about things like fake news, and a lot of those problems that are just really top level global issues with those kind of problem statements, and we're talking about something that is remarkable at its language processing mm-hmm. capabilities, and you start thinking, well, okay, would this also be able to actually accelerate, the negative impact of things like fake news beyond our ability to be able to react in time to? Anytime you can automate that, that kind of language centric spreading, almost viral or of content, that's got to be something that we need to be mindful of. I think.
Well, because I think, can I just jump in? Because one of the, obviously, OpenAI, one of the main investors, or one of them is Microsoft, but the other one is Peter Thiel, which doesn't probably has kind of a good background when it comes to data and artificial intelligence. He's been building some interesting platforms, but also he's been helping kind of the Brexit campaign and other stuff with their own models. But and also this OpenAI is one of the investors is Elon Musk and Sam Altman, which is also known in the area to back up interesting projects. So there's a lot of people involved here from many areas. Some of them might use AI or these models to the good of humanity. Some of them just for their own kind of commercial or enterprise purpose. But this is just a platform that everyone can use, right? So for good and for bad. Do you think that it should be some kind of regulation, some kind of laws like Amazon? So Amazon, IBM, and Microsoft, all of them decided kind of this year that their platform shouldn't be used to do AI before there was some kind of laws or legislation against or in favor of AI. Do you think that we are at that kind of the point that we actually need to regulate this area before we go a bit deeper?
Well, I think regulation is a mechanism, and I certainly think regulation should have a role to play. That there are. It's such a big topic. I wouldn't want to say, "Oh, hey, regulate," and that's the answer, because to be honest, I don't know. It's a really complicated area, and it goes outside technology. It goes into people's rights and very significant global issues and culture. I think Microsoft, for instance, that it wasn't in their last filing, they listed as like a business operational risk. I think they listed reputational harm done by biased AI or something. So this is a big ticket item, and as it's becoming more to the forefront, people are getting more serious about it. I think if you look at a lot of the AI research, there's some really, really good sponsorship, and you mentioned companies doing some, in my mind, really good steps there. There's some really good AI ethics researchers and and scientists, who really want to focus on this thing. But what they need to do is they need to try and apply their ethics models to AI at scale. And that's how we learn that we got AI wrong, because it's very difficult to know all the ins and outs. So we need to take this AI ethics research to be able to apply it at scale, to test those models and to say, well, what's the impact of doing these things? I think the challenge is always the race for the commercial gain, which we can all understand. So OpenAI themselves, have now switched to being a for-profit business. So the question is, I'm not suggesting anything of them or anything like that, but it's just a simple fact that as soon as you're a for-profit business and there's commercial considerations, there is a directly competing agenda to giving the time to test out these models from an ethical perspective to do that work. So, I think the first step would be to make sure that we are testing these models against the various, testing these AI engines against the various ethical models, and that we do that with full transparency. And what we learn from that should then dictate, okay, well, here are the steps that we should take to try and put some kind of controls to make sure that we don't run away with this. But it's springing up very fast, and it's springing up everywhere. So I think it needs some centralized leadership to do this at scale, and then all the startups and the people that follow can there could be standard ethical models that gets applied to the various AI services and engines. I don't see that happening right now at significant scale. So that would be a really good thing, I think, for the technology leaders to kind of rally around and take those commitments a bit further, maybe, and saying, look, let's commit to that. Let's commit to testing these things against these models. And
so more self-regulation than government regulation.
No. So I think government regulation is going to be a part. I think the trouble is you don't know the answer until we've tested the models. So I think let's get the commitment to do the testing of the ethical models, right? And let's understand what AI ethics we should apply. Let's get a best practice for doing that. And there are great organizations, by the way, looking at technology for good and AI. Some of them right here in the UK, doing fantastic work. And I think we need to just make sure that there is sufficient sponsorship. Hopefully, we shouldn't need to force it, but it needs to be centralized. And I think all the technology leaders should rally around committing to A, enabling that testing to take place, and B, implementing the results universally.
On the whole concept of regulation, or either government or self-regulation, and there is something that puzzles me with AI, which is when you have got an AI that is creating a text or a song. Let's call it a fake text or a fake song, because it's generated by not by a human but by a synthetic by an algorithm. If we draw the parallel with what we had with diamonds, when we finally figure out how to make fake diamonds by making diamonds in a cost-effective way in a factory, the way that got regulated was actually they added originally a tint and now a serial number to diamonds. You cannot really, and if you're doing very good quality prints at home with your inkjet printer, they actually add those magical yellow dots, so you can always take the fake from the real apart. But there's actually no way we can do that with AI at this stage already.
Yeah, no, that again, that goes into the whole kind of fake news control. So I work with a number of people who are in content roles, mainstream publishers and things, and there's so much work that they're all doing and trying to say, how can we effectively implement a digital footprint? And I've heard everything from distributed ledgers, to everything else, to try and help that happen, so that it becomes much easier to put a community validated digital footprint on what's the legitimate, what's the illegitimate, and so on. I don't think there's any clear answers on that at the moment. You're right, but it's this, that's another typical problem that we just need to try and tackle. I think that one's going to be slower. I'll be honest. I think the AI one would be simpler. I don't think it's simple. I think it would be slightly simpler to commit to implementing, because there's more control over which services are kind of creating those things. So if even we talk about this one, then we're talking about people consuming it off of the base capability, right? So it's not like now we're going to have millions of people using their own little AI engines. They'll be basing it off this. So if we implement it on the platforms, then those controls can roll out. Compare that to producing some content, a picture or a document or a song. Which format do you want to control? There's no centrally controlling format. So I think it's a little bit easier to tackle the AI one, but I certainly wouldn't describe it as easy by any stretch.
Okay, so for the people following us at home, the good news is that we now have one printer of perfectly fake bills, $1,000 bills. But the good news is that we only have one printer, so we can print the bills and then stamp them, saying that this is fake. We'll just address the problem by the time we can all have our very own $1,000 bill printer at home.
I think humanity are great problem solvers, and usually when there's money to be lost by governments, people solve problems pretty quickly.
It is, and I think that comes next to this pandemic, right? The government losing money, so that we need to address that issue really fast. But talking about not losing money, but probably making more money, the next topic, it's still about AI, but actually it is about companies that acquire AI startups. And there's some data from Statista on this article. It comes from PC Magazine, and says that Apple leads the race for AI domination. I really like this kind of the topic, domination. So basically, it compares Apple, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, and Amazon, and tries to see how many companies these kind of major ones bought from AI startups since 2010, so 10 years ago, for the past 10 years. So Apple leads this data with 20 AI startups, then it goes Google, Microsoft, Facebook, and Amazon. So clearly Apple is buying a lot of AI startups, going to the market and buying them for the past 10 years. The most interesting thing is, throughout this article, there was a voice platform impact ranking that decided to rank all of the AI assistants that these platforms had. So Siri, Alexa, Google, and Bixby from Samsung. And apparently the scale goes, well, my Alexa right now started talking. Alexa, stop. This is really bad. So on a scale of
serious,
exactly, on a scale from minus 250 to 250, on the scale kind of to see where these AI platforms would position themselves. From the Amazon one, it comes with 110 points, and goes Google, and then comes Siri with 38. So the gap here is quite huge for a company that bought more AI startups than anyone else in the market. Richard, do you think that Apple is doing something good with them, or just what kind of stuff are they doing? Because they are buying a lot of startups but not improving their products, are they?
Look, I think these are interesting data points. We talked about VMware just now, how AI is kind of, or machine learning, whatever, it's going into pretty much everything that we do. And what we have is we have very different applications of AI to do. I did have a quick look at Apple. I'm not going to claim this is authoritative, but I was trying to look through their various acquisitions. And to be honest, most of them just seem to be, a problem statement where they're trying to implement some sort of new product or feature, and they go and find somebody who's already got a head start in having that done by AI. Their recent one in January was I think it was AI for image recognition on low-powered devices. Makes sense that Apple would be interested in that, right? So I think rather than some grand scale, if you've bought 50 of these things, you've now ticked the box and you're kind of the AI master or something. I think it's just more a case of, well, they've got a use case, they needed an AI solution. It's not a very mature area, so you're going to look in the genesis of who's doing what. And so, when it's in a genesis, it's small startups. So you go and acquire the startup. The other obvious feature of that is it's probably cheaper for companies like Apple to acquire talent through the acquisition of a startup company than it is to go and train talent who don't necessarily have an idea or a concept to develop straight onto. These people have done it. They've produced something. They've got a business. So that's fantastic experience when we know that AI is going to be important. So I think it's probably a combination of those two things. It's one, it's just buying a practical use case, and two, you're acquiring the talent of the companies as well.
And do you think that the voice assistants are the best use case for AI at the moment?
They're interesting, and I think it'll be essential as we go forward. We mentioned no code earlier. If you want no code to really fly, then you're going to need awesome voice recognition and all the resultant processes that go on from that, right? So you've got to be able to translate everything from kind of a voice. I absolutely see a future where you just say what you want, and all that hard work gets done for you, including creating entirely new apps. I think that's true. All the other roles for then, okay, well, now that I've got that voice recognition, what can I do? You can play Spotify, or you can do something like that. They're all relatively straightforward tasks that, let's be honest, they all still struggle with, which tells you where we are. But it has tremendous applications beyond just being able to turn your lights on or to play whatever music you want. So yeah, I think they're all, they all have their pros, they all have their cons. I think, again, for me, it's more about when do the killer use cases come that really need them to be better at what they do. And all these different technologies, I think they all come together. The overall capabilities of these AI services all improve, leveraging each other to some extent. So I can see them increasingly specializing to a degree. That bit does the voice, this bit does the comprehension, this bit does the, and as each of those gets better, then the overall service will increase in capability as well. It should also strongly suspect it will consolidate.
It's not the first time you mentioned Lowcode. Actually, I remember it was, what was it? Microsoft last week announced, I think it was on their latest event, that they are betting a lot on Lowcode on, Microsoft Teams, which I believe that kind of in this year or next year, Teams is going to be the operating system for kids in school or something like that. You have everything in Teams, right? You have applications, you have whatever you need to go there. It reminds me of the kind of, 15 years ago, everyone had a netbook, kind of the cheapest laptops that you can get, right? Couldn't run anything. It was so bad that it didn't work. That was before the Chromebooks and everything from Google. Well, we used to have Windows there because there was the only choice. There wasn't netbooks from Apple, but that thing was so bad. And then when I look at Microsoft Teams, I see a lot of stuff happening at the same time, mostly because of the pandemic. Clearly, the platform wasn't ready for everything that they're going to throw at it. I still think that they're having the kind of the strategy of creating a kitchen sink with Teams, because right now we have everything there and they try to aim for everything at the same time. I'm not sure if having low code on that kind of thing is going to be a good solution. Kind of throws me back to the good old days of the SharePoint portal and this kind of stuff, when people have had developed applications on SharePoint, and that was really bad. But the point is, and because you said you don't have kind of a killer app or a killer business case for AI, do you think that with all these tools, we have enough capability right now to go to and returning to the low code, going back to the enterprise or the company that we're working for, whatever business that we work for, and just look at the process and try to picture that in a kind of low code platform with all the tools that we have? or do we actually need to go back to the drawing board and redo our processes and workflows and re-engineer everything? Because with low code we can skip some steps, and sometimes you just forget that, right? Because when we develop our application, we look at the stuff that you usually do throughout our work day or whatever you're going to do, and we try to mimic that on the application side. With low code, it's really easy, and everything is kind of connected. But there's this kind of gap between the reality and the platform. But bottom line, do you think that we have right now all the tools that we might need to re-engineer stuff?
No. Yeah, I think which is fine. I think, and by the way, there are absolutely killer use cases out there for AI. I didn't mean that. I mean, if you look at where they are on kind of the evolution chart, you can't exactly say that there is a commodity set of AI services for everyone to exploit. We're so far off that. So there are of course killer use services. Every one of those startups that got bought, right? They had a killer use case for AI. So I think killer use cases are all over. I really mean, the kind of the commoditization of AI services. When I get into that, when we get to that level, that's when it really kind of starts taking over everywhere. I forgot your question. Well, I was just talking about low code.
Yeah, no code. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I think people should be doing right at the moment is experimenting. I don't think this is ever an either or thing. We talked at the top of the chat about multi-cloud, and one of the key things about multi-cloud is don't force your Six Sigma waterfall people to start using stickers and go agile, right? And don't tell your agile people they've got to raise a service ticket. You use the right kind of tools, methods, and processes for whatever it is you're doing. I absolutely think people should be experimenting with no code, but it's experimenting right now. Who knows what that's going to look like? So figure out which processes work in your experimentation. With new technology, the technology gets formed, but then what follows is kind of the evolution of the practices that enable to take fullest advantage of the technology. You can't put the cart before the horse on that. So I think it's firmly in the area of experimentation, but it's really exciting, and I definitely think people should be at least looking at it so they can start preparing for the kinds of things that they want to set up, and have a group that's ready to start adopting and learning from the best practices as they evolve in that space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Richard, I'm going to go devil's advocate on this one, and well, I'm partially agreeing with you. It's going to be an interesting experimentation with low code and AI, but in the end, I think it will be like AI and low code will be like Unix, Linux on the desktop, which we're. I believe it's the 2021. It's the year of Linux on the desktop. It might. I believe it's going to go the same way, and mostly down to the previous experience with Front Page, when Front Page started designing websites by templates, and all of that evolved. We do have sites now that are their core function is actually creating websites by template and allowing you to tweak those. But still nowadays, if you want something done, something new idea done, you still do it by humans with just a higher level of interaction on humans. Humans have been doing no code for a while. It's actually when a developer is coding and has got Stack Exchange on the side, they're just doing it slower than what GPT-3 can do.
Yeah.
That's what most people have been doing as a career. But just moving all your development or even part of your development into this, I don't see it happening in 2021, or I don't see it happening in the year that Linux finally hits the desktop. But either way, it's going to be an interesting trip, and I fully agree with you. What we're seeing with Apple buying is definitely they have a need. They have got some itch that they need to scratch, and they just went and solved the problem by throwing some money at it, and in the most financial healthy way.
Well, I think
Yeah, I've always advocated that as long as it doesn't take you into any dead end channels, you should seek to reuse capabilities that are already developed. It's a rare, it does happen, but it's a rare instance for you to create value by defining your own version of something that already exists. I'm not saying that's the black and white rule, but most of the time it's not about defining something that already exists. If something's established and it gives you the capabilities you need, then usually the better value is to take advantage of what you can do with it, right? To add value on top of that capability. And in these instances, I think they just, they saw somebody who had established what they wanted. They obviously don't want other people to use it, and they want to evolve it, but in their direction. So it's natural just to acquire and to get that fast start.
Well,
so your suggestion is that they should embrace and then extend and then extinguish.
No, I think, what happens within company structures will, whether they go into a business unit of their own or into someone else, who knows what happens within the companies. But as I said, they're also buying that talent, right? So firstly, they get to own and define a roadmap for the service they've already deemed useful rather than trying to build one from scratch. We know the pace of evolution now. If they see something that's working and say, well, we just want a version of that, but slightly different. If they want to go and create their own, by the time they get to where they were, the other company is going to be, 18 months further on again, at a rapid pace of innovation. So, with the pace of change, if you effectively say, right, I'm just going to go back and develop my own one, what you're losing is the exponential increase in innovation that's gone on in the time you've been trying to just catch up with where they were, right? So it's better, if it works for you, it's quite often better to just acquire that or leverage it. You don't have to acquire a company, leverage a cloud service. Don't write your own version of that, leverage a cloud service. And then just put your value straight on top of that. And if you need to steer the direction you want that talent on your books as well, then that sounds like an acquisition target.
I have two things about the kind of the low code or no code platforms, especially when it comes to local and central government. I think that they're the perfect use case to use this kind of platform, because most of the activity that they have is repetitive. Every borough, every council, every government in the world has the same kind of activity when it comes to citizens. Obviously, it has some specifics, but I'd say 80%, 70% of the work should be used by this kind of no-code or low-code platforms for rapid development. And the other one is usually when people look at this kind of platforms, they think, well, I can't optimize, or I can't change a lot because I need to use whatever it's there. And if I have some specifics of my business, it's going to be hard to transform or to put that into the platform, which is kind of interesting because everyone thinks that their business is different from everyone else up until the point that it isn't. If you drill down to the basics, they pretty much do the same kind of stuff, right? So if they start using this kind of platform actually to create more agility and accelerate when it comes to innovation, accelerate this so that they can focus on the other parts of the business, actually can be a good thing. But that's kind of my take on low code, on no code.
100%, Victor, by the way, just on what you said, that's exactly what it's about. And in terms of, we'll have that bet and we'll see what happens in the next couple of years. But, just looking at the GPT-3 experiments, people are doing it. And that took me back. I was like, wow, okay. I thought this was the direction, but that's really fast. They're already creating apps in that way. So, once it's fully unleashed, we'll see. It's very difficult to predict how fast it will go, but I think it's coming, and probably faster than we all think.
Oh yeah. And right now that we're home, we have more time to develop stuff, right? Right.
That's not the way it works.
Right. One of the next news is about online shopping. online shopping, and it comes from Google with the recommendations AI. We're still on the topic of artificial intelligence. Bottom line, Google has a bunch of what do we call it? Products, yes, like YouTube, Google Search, that use recommendations. Some of them, they don't recommend things in the proper way. They also have products. They run their ad network. It also recommends ads on base of the stuff that you've been seeing. They have an entire kind of stack already on their side. And they're launching this kind of recommendations AI so that people can use. They can start using it as a product, especially when it comes to customers shopping and the entire journey, that you can get more personalized and product recommendations. Which kind of reminds me of all of this thing with social media, with Facebook, with Amazon, people buying stuff online. Facebook controlling pretty much every website that has a share button on Facebook. They know that you've been there. You go on Amazon, you buy a microwave, and then you go on Facebook, and then they recommend 3 more for you to buy because one is not enough, or you buy a new bike and you go on Facebook and recommends that. Do you think that all of this capability that we have, it's kind of the beginning, yes, recommendations, it shouldn't be because Google does this at scale, but do you think that this kind of big companies providing us the tools for us to use, especially around recommendation of products, we are heading on the right direction? Is this a good thing to have, or is just more intrusive when it comes to advertisement and all of this kind of stuff that usually we try to block it?
So I think it's must have been 6-7 years ago. I was stupid enough to write some predictions, and the last so only the last one hasn't come true, but I'll add yet. So the last of the predictions was that instead of buying or subscribing to kind of cloud services we think of them today, what we'll actually do is we'll end up subscribing to business functions. And the business functions will be made of technology, but it will basically self-determine what our business needs at this point in time, and we'll actually effectively take that capability as a service. And I think this is kind of a baby example of what that is. Everyone does it into retail wants to get better value out of the data on their individual customers. And the recommendations engine, we know, I used to work in retail actually, we know that people who execute well, they can see anything from like a 20 to an 80% increase in revenues through an excellent recommendations engine. So for kind of those things, I actually think it's a really, really good thing. I think it's great that the services exist. I think Amazon already have one. I'm trying to remember what it's called now. Personalize or something, I can't remember. I think they've got a similar service. It comes with a flip side, of course, as always. And the flip side is, again, about the control of the data and the applied algorithms. I was still, one of the things that's bothered me most in the last kind of decade or something was personalized pricing. When Amazon did their little trial of that. And I've got a lot of respect for Amazon try different things. So okay, but personalized pricing really bothered me. That each individual would actually get a different price, based on their algorithms deciding a propensity to pay, and that really bothered me. There was also some research done. I think it might have been in the UK. I can't remember. But there's some research done where they're basically doing price setting algorithms, and they had 2 AIs. This was experimentation, but they had 2 AIs that were doing price setting algorithms. And what they ended up doing was sort of becoming aware of each other, and they effectively ended up colluding to set prices artificially high, which is a crime if that was 2 companies doing that. But it was almost unnoticeable that was actually going on. So I think we need to be very careful with, again, goes back to our earlier comment about ethics in the application of these. I think the fact they've got the service is great. I think from Google's perspective and same from Amazon's perspective, we also know that there's an immense amount of value, additional value, in having people's data. And presumably, I don't know, but presumably to use a service, you'll need to, effectively import your data into the engine for it to learn and process. And I think it's just worth thinking through. But what does that lead to? Straight away, you think about data gravity, and probably it leads to propensity to take on other services, from the same place, and that can be absolutely fine, but it's something to think about. But then, it also leads to the fact of, well, okay, but what's happening to all that data, beyond I get what I want out of it, but it's my customer data. And, anyone should be very cautious and thorough about investigating before they kind of release any elements of control over that data. So bottom line is, I think it's fantastic. I'm not negative on it at all. I think it's great that these services are coming to the fore. I would be particularly wary of making sure that the same ethics is applied to the use of those services. And then I think people should just, do their own research, not go, oh, hey, there's a service, that's great, I don't need to think about it. No, you do. You need to think about it more if you're effectively outsourcing a critical function, a critical business function like that. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
Well, that's an interesting one, because you're right. So if this gets, well, it's already released as a tool. So I'm guessing that a lot of companies doing retail, they have the option of develop their own recommendation engine from scratch or from anything that's out there, or just use Google's, which also has a lot of information about people and can probably tweak the whole thing. But usually when you look at this, so let's say that Amazon, well, you said that Amazon has their own recommendation engine, right? Is that right?
Yeah, I think they've got a similar service at least.
Which is kind of this, because if I'm working in retail, I probably see Amazon as a real competitor when it comes to retail and not Google. I probably would use Google's recommendation engine rather than Amazon, for instance, because I feel kind of more threatened by the Amazon because of the whole platform, and Google because they don't have a proper, I don't know, marketplace. They have the products there, people can do stuff, but it's not the same. It doesn't have the same weight as Amazon. But at the end, you have the search, which you don't have on Amazon, right? So it's a mix of using those tools. And for retail, as you pointed out, right, this is the kind of their butter and bread, right? So having to know their customer and their preferences, and so that they can recommend better stuff for them. It's their data, it's their customer. They should kind of take care of that in a better way. I'm not sure if people are going to start using this. Probably they're going to get some large customers to start using this platform up until the moment that they realize, well, maybe we can do this with some other tool that exists there in the market, and we're going to do this in-house. Still going to be a bit of experiment for them, right?
Yeah, for sure. And also, I think it's just, people just need to do it with their eyes open. The taking advantage of these services just means being savvy. I said earlier, and I believe people should take advantage of a service that does what you need and does it well. And if that's close enough to a commodity function, you should seriously consider using it instead of developing your own that, let's face it, probably won't be as good. But do it with your eyes open, and make sure that you adjust your competencies not to engineer some service when you're not a software engineering company, but instead to figure out how to manage the risks and to exploit the benefits of taking advantage of a universally available service.
Vitor, when you said the retail looking at Google or looking at Amazon, looking at their AI tools to predict what the users would want to buy, or even they eventually fine tune the conditions of the deal, how the deal is proposed, and what prices, what conditions they can give. When looking at that, the way I see it is that you're looking at one, and considering one is a swan, and the other one is the song, but actually, if you take a step back, to me, it just seems like it's the swan song of retail. AI will eat very hard, because as soon as we fine tune that, we will have the exact best buddy for shopping that will always provide us with significant suggestions on things to buy. At this stage, if I buy a vacuum cleaner, all of their AI models then suggest I would buy 16 more vacuum cleaners for the next fortnight. And but as soon as they solve that, as soon as they fine tune that by using proper AI tools, that's it. They will figure out after I've bought a noise cancelling headphone. They will figure out what I want next, and they will get it right, way better than the guys on the street.
Probably. I would suggest that if they start to match kind of your bank account, they know that you already bought something, which then brings me back to the subject of Amazon. It's not the first time that I go to Amazon. Let's say I buy a new set of headphones, and immediately Amazon recommends the same headphones. But they already know that I already bought that, right? They know that I was a customer. They already shipped that. Why the hell are they recommending the same thing all over again?
Yes.
That doesn't make any
Their
sense.
AI model is crap, but as soon as it gets it right, as soon as it stops being crap, they will just take over retail. The whole concept of retail will disappear. They will know when you feel like having a pizza, and they will know when you want to buy some lipstick. And they will get it right every time, Peter.
Right, Richard. Do you think that recommendations they suit you? Do the online platforms recommend what actually do you need?
I think if I'm using a service that I've decided to put my trust into, I think there's a degree of recommendations that that I would like. And there's I can think of, if you ever use your music service, right? Then sometimes you can say, "I'll play another song like this because I'm in the mood." Well, that's a recommendation, and we all like it, right? So we can't have it both ways. I think there are absolutely times where the recommendations are great and we want them. I think the issue comes with the intrusiveness of how it generates those recommendations. And I think it has to be incredibly transparent in what tools and mechanics that they're actually using to make those recommendations for us. And GDPR is much maligned, but GDPR has great initiative or great sort of legal footprint set in place to say you can't do that. You can't just go off. You have to be very clear with people. And I'm actually a fan of GDPR for its the way it sets a baseline against which people have to think twice before they really just kind of go wherever they want to get their details. We know it's not perfect, but I think it's a step in absolutely the right direction.
Indeed, because mostly because GDPR comes with a very, very, very big enforcement stick, which is a very effective way to regulate stuff. And for reference, what we're mentioning here is within GDPR, there's a provision for if there is an automated decision taken within your process. If you're a customer applying for an insurance and the insurance gets declined, or you've got a very high premium to pay, you are actually entitled to know the process that led to that decision if it was a machine-based decision. So GDPR allows this level of transparency, and no one will, in his right mind, at this stage, is going to say, I just don't care about GDPR. That's just a story for the boogeyman, because this boogeyman comes with a very, very big enforcement stick.
And I think it will be the basis for we've mentioned earlier about regulation. Well, obviously GDPR is a regulation, but I think that the basis that regulation asserts will allow us to have more kind of influence and control over how these technologies are used in ethical ways. without necessarily needing another regulation for that thing or that thing or that thing. So, I'm actually a big fan for clauses like that one.
Good. And talking about enforcement, the next topic is Huawei. And not Huawei in the UK. We've been discussing this on Tech Talks London for the past months about Huawei in the UK. I'm really surprised by the whole thing. I'm just to make it clear, I'm just against stupid decisions. I'm not against Huawei or the government's whatever decision they're gonna make, but going back and saying, well, you need to strip all of your equipment from the network and you need to install a new one. That's a bit far-fetched. But the point is, the EU says, so this is a news from a news clip from Reuters, and they point out that EU countries should urgently diversify 5G suppliers, as if there's a lot of offer in the market right now for 5G suppliers, I would guess. There's a bunch of them, apparently. The Commission says, do you think, Richard, do you think that this 5G thing is just a commercial war, or is it more than that, and actually there's a lot of underlying technology that probably need to replace, or we need to look at other suppliers? Or because it's EU, we need to focus in Sweden and Norway as probably suppliers for this?
So as an ambition, it's a critical capability for me. 5G is absolutely. We talked about the pace of change, right? And if we deploy 5G rapidly and learn to take full advantage of it, then I think the entire economy benefits from us doing that. Excuse me. If we delay by a year, then all that advantage is lost, and you're actually on massively defensive territory, because it will be others that are exploiting the benefits of having that platform of capability. So for me, for that reason, this is an absolutely critical capability that we should be deploying as soon as possible. It's my view, because we want to develop the services that run on top of it, the higher order services. Of course, there's risks, and you should always have diversity of your critical supply chain. Otherwise, you're a hostage. Of course, you should. But it's just like when a customer tells me they're worried about using AWS Lambda because they can't move it off. I'm like, yeah, but do you want the outcome or not? Right? It's a situation. Clearly, that's the service that's going to deliver for you. Or you just do it again, like we said earlier. Do it with your eyes open. You can manage risks. Right? There's all sorts of things that you can put in place. I'm very disappointed that anything would slow down 5G rollout, because I think it is a game changer. For the European recommendations, there's two sides. One, you should diversify. Yep, of course, fine. As we just said, that's probably sensible, but not at the expense of getting the outcomes that you need to achieve. I haven't read the whole thing, so the risk is that it goes beyond that, and it's actually saying, oh, hey, we need kind of the EU 5G providers to be doing this, because that will be clearly as successful as the EU cloud to rival Amazon and Azure. That's been awesome. Or the whatever other initiative that says, hey, we should build our own one. We just talked about why that's a bad idea. Mm-hmm. Take a sensible view of what your issues with using these services are. Figure out how to remediate against those risks and issues, and then execute. And it's not very often that the answer is to build your own from a platform of having next to zero capability in that space. That's the path to success.
Every time we have this discussion, we always stumble with the fact that Europe or the Western world, to be more precise, no longer has the technical capabilities to support 5G at the same scale of China, mostly because we've been offloading all of those developments to China for the last 15, 16, 60 years. I don't see this whole let's cut China out of the 5G work. Let's just cut China off. I don't see this as disruptive in the sense that if the only real effect that we have is that we are going to delay 5G. That's for sure. If we say, well, we're taking a Huawei out of it and we're doing it 5G on our own, no matter what. That has the obvious positive impact of we're taking back control of development of our networks, and I would deeply apologize using that word, that expression, but it is in fact that we're actually it's a step towards the direction of having the ability, the technical ability in Europe and in the Western world again. Sadly, it appears that what's driving this is the usual misguided guidance from a couple of lunatics. So in the long run, I don't think this will provide a consistent evolution, but this would be one way in a parallel universe for Europe and the Western world in itself to start being to become a major player in this technological development. We do have the ability to say what we want 5G or whatever next generation is. So we would regulate whatever 6G is, and we would regulate it according to something that we would develop. It is, for all intents and purposes, our standard, so we can guide it. We can actually decide what we want, where we want the standard to go, and we can make that fit whatever capabilities we have, and with that supporting and developing those capabilities again. It's one of the easiest ways that we can actually catch up on the race that we have been losing to China, mostly because we're saying that, well, you can do the run. I really don't feel like running at all. But as I said, it's misguided in its essence. So it's lost.
What feels the whole situation is that we're talking about someone. Let's create this kind of analogy. Someone is driving a full feature car, right? And Europe says, well, maybe you should wear different types of seatbelts to manage this kind of risk, or maybe you should use different brands of cars. And sometimes some governments return to the kind of the Stone Age and decides to kind of look at that and say, listen, we don't need cars. We need to discuss if the wheel is going to be round or square. This is the kind of what it really feels with 5G.
No. You almost got me on board on that one, but no, we're discussing whether cars should have Bluetooth or not. We already have the car, and now we have, well, should they have hands-free built in or not? It's an evolution. It is a game changer for lots of things, but it is an evolution. If we say, okay, we're not going to add Bluetooth to the cars, you're just stuck with the car, which is a perfectly usable model. That's what I meant. It's not going to take us back to the dark ages if we're stuck in the 4G for 5 more years.
I think the miss though is if you look at let's go back to the GPT-3 example, right? Let's imagine that GPT-3 is its own thing, right? That all the value is going to come from what people do with it, and those higher order services that get built on top of that. And then if you look at now imagine you've got one group that is not going to have GPT-3 for 2 years, right? When they finally get it, because now they're happy to use it, the having GPT-3 or having access to that base service is no longer going to be the game to be played. It's going to be taking advantage and leveraging all the services that have been built on top of it, but that'll have been being built by the people who've got it first. So if you truly want to compete and have more stake and control on the services, again, I would manage those risks, but I would get on board as fast as possible so that you are central to the control and evolution and development of the services that are built on top of the thing. And for me, it's what gets built on top of 5G. That it itself, the rollout is fascinating, it's transformative, but it's what's going to get done with a deployed 5G capability. That's what's critically important. And if we're not doing it, we miss a window. And not only do we miss the window, but other people will be doing it, and then we'll be beholden to those services. Because what choice are you going to have, right? Because it's already built. You've got to use that. So I think my personal take is it's quite a dramatic loss to slow down that 5G rollout. I would be finding a way to make that work.
That's why we need more diversity, tells the EU. Either way, next topic. It's about an application called, let me get this straight. It's a long article from Wired. It's called Citizen. So it's an application that asks people to report the crime next door. It's kind of the Citizen app where you can report stuff, you can snitch on your neighbor, whatever they're doing, you can take video. It's kind of, it builds up on something that is already built before called, let me see if I get this straight, where is it? Vigilante, something like that. It was an application already built before, so it extends that. It kind of puts the hands of the police so the policing fact in the hands of the citizens. They watch the crime. It kind of reminds me of the neighborhood watches that people do when you get into the neighbor and stuff like that. But that was kind of interesting a few years ago, right? Small communities, neighbors looking after each other, seeing who's going to the neighborhood and try to control that. It reminds me kind of my grandmother that sometimes spends time at the window and say, "Oh, I never met, and this is a weird person here on the street, on the neighborhood." But then it stops there, right? It clearly stops there. It's someone inside their house looking at the windows saying, "Oh, this guy or this person looks suspicious," but then it stops. Nothing happens. Obviously, probably in America, people will just gonna buy some guns and gonna try to shoot them or something, gonna do extreme stuff. But usually in Europe, we have this kind of situation of grandma looking at the window, or some older people looking at the window and looking at neighbors. "Oh, this guy looks suspicious," and then it stops. When you give people an application that expands this into the kind of, it's not social media, but into the more digital way, I think I find this quite disturbing, to be honest, and especially because it feeds on the bias that everyone has and hate if someone is more kind of biased towards a certain race or a certain specific type of person. And this kind of tool expands that, and I'm not sure if that's going to be a good idea. What do you think, Richard? Is it a good idea to have this kind of application?
As a group of individuals, we're fiercely reluctant to sacrifice our privacy, at least knowingly. We sure as hell aren't reluctant to sacrifice someone else's, right?
True.
Ready to run around and stick a camera in their face. That looks dodgy to me. I mean, I'm very concerned about it. So for starters, I'm not sure I buy into this is for the purposes of doing good. There's ways that you mentioned things like Neighborhood Watch. They could evolve technically, and that's an organization that's just got its roots in exactly what it is: a better crime prevention in the neighborhood. They work with the official police services, so it's kind of okay. Maybe it could be technically superior, but I'd rather go that route. I don't know what the motivations for this one are. There doesn't seem to be an awful lot of transparency in kind of their decisions or the processes they're making, or indeed how they're planning to make money. And yet, clearly they're saying that they want to start making money. So what are they going to do to monetize it? And the likeliest answer comes back with content. So they need people to content on it, and that's what they're going to monetize. They've said they won't do ads, but they're going to try and get some kind of monetization through volumes of use, and the volumes of use needs content, and so the content has to draw people in. So it's not just going to be, this car was parked suspiciously. They want a fire and a fight, and something that will draw the kind of gawking public in to watch that, and that for me always creates an escalation. I don't think we've seen it with most social media, right? I actually still think most people on this earth are good and kind and polite. But there is like an escalation maelstrom that goes on in these platforms where that level of humanity is taken away, that one-to-one contact, and things just escalate, and suddenly everything gets desensitized, and it just goes off the wall and usually goes downward. It's like that Microsoft chatbot that became a racist.
In a couple of minutes, right?
Right, a few minutes, racist and sexist, and so there's this downward trend that comes from social media, and I worry that there's probably, in my mind, there's probably a fair likelihood that the way they would monetize and make profit is through that happening. So I'd be immensely suspicious of that. The other really important thing, given the challenges that have happened particularly in the US, but globally, with Black Lives Matter and things like that, and proper levels of injustice, is one of the remarkable observations is how the average person has been wildly biased, sometimes with quite detrimental effects. So we've seen all the videos of, as they call them, the Karens, with their sense of self-righteousness, and they'll call the police on the person because he was black while being completely polite. So what are they going to be now shoving cameras in people's faces and putting up their own biases and getting other people to now think that person's got was a criminal or something? We've seen the Twitter hunters, who identify that guy who stole the posters off the child, and they wrongly identified him, and then he's getting death threats and things like that. So people aren't great judges of character, particularly on social media. And if you put those two things together, this combustible escalation of content-based social media without proper controls, and you put that in a way that plays to people's fears, deliberately making them feel that it's their job to put across their thoughts and biases and opinions on other people, that sounds like a pretty toxic mix. And it's one that would worry me.
Interesting.
I'm going to guess that behind Citizen is a conglomerate of news channels of some sort. And it is, as you said, Richard, it's down to the content, the monetization. Back in the days in Portugal, we only had 2 TV channels, and we were hoping that at some point we would have private TV and cable TV, and then we had it, and then with that came the disappointment of, oh Jesus, this is even worse. We were facing with the reality TV. And reality TV was a major step in the evolution of content. And that was the moment I realized that TV is no longer to entertain and educate us. It's mostly about giving people what people want to see. And fundamentally, people will at some stage will want to see, and this is very sad but true, a guy being shot in the face in the exact moment he's being shot in the face. So having this surveillance network connected to a news channel will allow us to predict and then later deliver the immediate content of this situation just started, it escalated, oh Jesus, the guy got shot in the face. And this is the new flavor of content that people will want to see immediately.
Yeah, and while they're claiming outrage over it, this is terrible. Watch this, it's terrible.
And they share that on social media. Look at this.
Yeah, they say, don't watch this, it's terrible, but they don't. So watch it, it's terrible. That's it's significant. It is down to social media. And there was another excellent article on Wired that I read a little while ago about kind of the way Facebook has wrestled with its own control of content, and actually the fact that saying that we will, allow everything in because we don't want editorial control. Well, that's an editorial control decision to say I'm going to allow everything, right? So, aren't what we cannot continue doing is having this full abstinence of responsibility. We were talking about retail earlier. If you remember, there was all this phone tracing that was briefly being piloted, where if you walked around a shop, it could kind of ping your phone and it would know you'd walked into a shop, and it could ping you with an offer. And of course, people freaked out. They didn't like it. But as this got kind of broken down, the tech company was saying, "Oh, hey, we just make the tech. It's not our responsibility about how people use it." And the retailers were saying, "Look, we assume if they're supplying the technology, we assume that they're controlling the ethics and all the rest of it. It's very easy for everyone to abdicate responsibility for the ethics of these platforms. But the answer is, as to who should control it, all of them should. And if we can't figure out a way to do that, kind of with the mishmash of approaches that we have now, then it's going to have to be significant legislation, which actually I think will hurt our ability to innovate, but it will have to go down that way. So I'm hopeful that everything that's gone on over the last couple of years will lead us to being able to implement. It's certainly top of mind now where it hasn't been before. So I think we can afford to give it a little while, keep the pressure up, see what comes out. But if not, it will have to go down the path of more strict legislation.
Basil, you mentioned about reality TV. Even reality TV that is being published has need to comply with some regulation. When it needs to comply with some regulation when it comes to content. And actually, there are government organizations that you can actually complain if they're doing a bad job. I remember that guy, I think it was Jeremy Kyle. They had a show, and then up until someone actually died because of the bad advice, and then the show was canceled. I think that we're waiting for this kind of stuff to happen on any of these applications. And Richard, you just mentioned that companies, they're building. You mentioned the example of retail. Companies are building the technology, and then retail starts to using it without knowing the ethical, who's going to control the ethical background of all of that. Reminds me of Clearview AI. So that company that develops applications. Well, the AI search tool for law enforcement in a bunch of states not just states, but even governments all across the world. The founder said because he's developed the tool and it shouldn't be questioned or people shouldn't complain because he was the first one to develop the tool. If it wasn't him, someone else would develop that. So it's just a matter of time. Yes. Which is kind of an interesting approach, right?
Great power.
Yeah. I mean, there's always an excuse, and like I say, it's very easy to abdicate responsibility, to point to some other issue, some other person, and they're not doing that, so why would I? That's very easy to do. It's too big an issue for that. I genuinely think it's these, unless we get a grip of these things, and I will roll in the AI ethics. These will rip at the very fabric of our kind of existing civilization. They already are. They're certainly pulling the strings and fraying the edges. So we do need to get a grip. I am pleased it is more top of mind for people now, but it needs to get tougher. And maybe the evolution of AI, and if we can start applying ethical principles to that, maybe that will serve as a model that we can then take and apply to other areas as well.
Good. And I think that we just closed the AI topic for now. I don't think we have anything else because you've just been talking for the past 1 hour and a half about AI models. Well, let's talk exactly. Let's talk something more interesting, which is working from home. So it was an article again from Harvard Business Review, kind of the implications of working without an office. It's not just working from home; it's not having an office actually to work for. They went to a survey that they decided they think that there are some upsides from all of this. One of the upsides, they said, well, people, because they're not working within the office, they can actually deliver more work. And one of the problems was, well, the upside is for employers, they can deliver more work, but the downside is for the manager, because it gets out of that kind of sense of control of the employer, right? Because they don't see them, they don't know where they are, they don't know what kind of stuff they're doing. It gets a bit fuzzy. And they have obviously more data that comes out of the survey, kind of the upsides and downsides. But bottom line, Richard, do you think that kind of people working from home or not going to an office, and just before I pass it to you, just there was a news today about Google that they said that no one is going to go to the office up until the end of 2021. So that's 1 year and a half. They're going to still work from home or from other places. Do you think that this kind of change of people from kind of white collar or knowledge workers not needing an office, it's going to be a good thing? I know that you and I, we don't care about that. We sometimes we go to the office, but most of us, we're just on the road, even Basilio on the road, working between different customers, and it's not a big deal. But do you think that for most of people working from home or not going to an office is going to be a big transformation, or we just, for the past months, we just adapt quite easily?
So I think it's great. I think the cultural change. It's another one that's been forced to say actually this is fine. It is very welcome. I think it's crazy that we have some very archaic views. And if you're one of those managers who needs to be looking over the shoulder of your employee, you're not a good manager. It's really that simple. And I would hope that employee can find another job. I think the big, people who don't embrace work from home from an organizational perspective are going to lose key people. It's now just the new normal that people should be able to work from home. All the horror stories about what would happen didn't happen. And in fact, there's many studies, we've been doing them within VMware to show, actually significant increases in levels of productivity, as well as increasing levels of job satisfaction. People just being happier, and that those are very, very positive results. As always, it's not just an either or thing. There are some roles where you should work in an office. Some people will prefer to work in an office, and some people prefer a mix to be able to balance it. And they're all good. I really don't think there's negatives. In fact, if you think about the potential positives, how many organizations right now are thinking, well, hang on, how much do I pay for that office in London that's sitting there empty most of the time, and now nobody even really wants to come back to? How much money would that free up? And if you freeing that up and you can slightly decentralize away from city locations, what does that do to kind of the broader economy impact, and the house prices and standards of living? So I think it is a very, very fundamental shift. I think it's a great thing. Not for everyone, but I've always known that that being in an office does not equal productivity and happiness, right? It's not exclusive. It depends on the individual. But productivity is about focusing on getting a job done. Where it doesn't work, of course, like right now, I'm doing so many late night calls because I'm working with US colleagues and they're running night after night after night.
Mm-hmm.
A little while ago, I would have just flown out to California for a few days. We would have sat in a room and got the job done. So it's not always perfect for productivity. There's times you really still want to get together, work together. But certainly recognizing that if somebody's working from home doesn't mean that they're actually got their feet up watching TV, etc., or now producing poor work because they haven't got a manager looking over their shoulder saying, "Oh, you forgot to cross the T" or something. That's just a nonsense. It always was, and it's nice to see it change.
Indeed. Richard, I have got a quick question for you, but just for reference, I do agree with just about everything you said. It's not a universal solution. Most people would, some people would always say, I would rather work at the office. Some jobs can only be done at the office. And there was not, we didn't suddenly fell off a cliff as everyone was saying when we started working from home. So that was a bit of a project fear there. Again, a reference to a past process. So it will be an evolution that will never go away. It's done, and we already took the first step, and it was a very valid first step. Now, my question to you would be: picture yourself as a manager that last year paid 2 million in rent for an office in London, and now you realize that you don't need to pay 2 million on office in London. You actually can go either get away with not having an office at all, or just having 200,000 per year of office rent in London. That almost 2 million that you're not paying, what are you going to do with that money?
What are you going to do with that money?
Yes, you as a manager.
Well, I mean, it depends on what the business priorities are. I mean, there's always something that requires more investment, right? So, I mean, investment for me, part of the whole point about doing transformation again is to stop spending money on things that aren't offering value and to redirect those funds into the key projects and initiatives that will drive value. So. And if somebody wants to close a data center, right, they don't close a data center because they think it looks ugly. They close it because they want to release the real estate. And when they release the real estate, that's a huge sum of money that now goes into their capital budgets to be applied elsewhere. So, I don't know. It depends on the business, depends on the company, what I'd do with that.
Yeah. Well, so what we're seeing is the equivalent of lots of people closing the equivalent of several data centers, because they can stop paying for that. If we look back into the track record of mankind, when they have one less bill of 2 million to pay, they're really not going to invest. They realize, oh, I just got 2 million richer, so I'll buy a bigger yacht. I do understand that most people, the sensible players on the market, will say, "Oh, actually, next year I can invest 2 million more. Money is an interesting resource. It's very expensive to some people." They'll say, "Well, we now have 2 more millions," which is it's the key to take us to the next level. But most people will just say, "I've got bigger productivity, so that's 1 more million in profit, and actually I've got 2 million less to pay for rent, so I can actually get myself a 3 million yacht this year." Well, and next year they will try something else.
Well, I don't agree with that. The thing is, I know where you're coming from, and just as a reference, Richard, this is the kind of mentality that usually the Portuguese managers have. Instead of investing in the company, they actually think, "Oh, I'm gonna buy a new car, a new house, because I'm the major shareholder. So I'm gonna return the investment. Instead of spending the investment, it's gonna return value to the only shareholder. This is me, or to the shareholders." So, but then sometimes bigger companies they have a long kind of strategy, and all the money that they can save now, they can actually invest in something better, to develop better products, or even to support their own employees.
Like Tesla.
It depends on the kind of strategy of the company, and it's not about the manager, but it's about the business, right? If the business wants to deliver value to the shareholders, there's nothing we can do, and the money, instead of going to real estate, goes directly into the shareholders' pocket, and that's it. Otherwise, they can just invest on better things for the employees, or for the business, or for the products that they want to do. I think that the major problem here, and I do agree with kind of both of you, I know where Basile is coming from. That's why I was trying to give you, Richard, as this kind of reference. But, and because of the real estate, and we have WeWork, we have the office, we have a bunch of companies that actually occupy entire buildings in the city, in London. Heck, even in Canary Wharf, right? So that's just office space. And there's a lot of companies providing services for those offices, right? The cleaning company, the guy or the company or the business that provides coffee and lunch and dinner and drinks and stuff like that. if we start to not go to the office, that's a massive impact in the economy that the city has right in the core of it, right? So one thing is going to Soho like we did I didn't, because I didn't go to Soho when the pubs opened, but people going to Soho to have a drink, because Soho is the place for you to have that. Obviously, you have some office space, but it's mostly for entertainment. The other thing is, if you go to Canary Wharf in a couple of months' time, because everyone decides to, I don't know, let's imagine JP Morgan, they gonna start working from home. That's an entire building from them that's not gonna be used, and they're not going to pay for rent, and that's not going to be converted to new offices because people are still going to work from home, and the local economy is going to suffer. So everything that we're going to do now in terms of relationship that the company has with their employees, with their managers and stuff like that, and the way that we're going to pick, the way that we're going to work, is going to have massive impact in the city, don't you think?
Yes.
Is that a good thing?
But well, I think it is. There's always difficulties for people in change. I think the huge mitigation is that that's not going to happen overnight, right? And the likeliest thing is, for starts, some of these leases run for so long that they can't release that real estate money anyway. So they're going to keep these things going. Other people won't be ready to do that yet. Other people believe it's the wrong thing to do. So it's not going to be like suddenly everything shuts down and dramatically impacts that local economy in such a short space of time. But the other thing is that basically what we're talking about is a supply and demand market. Right? So if the demand goes down, if you have too much supply, then effectively just the crazy prices come down. and so it doesn't mean that they're not going to use. We're going to have these warehouses of empty buildings. Not a chance. It's London. But it might go some way to rectifying the craziness around the financial structures of what takes place in London, which affect those people who are doing the cleaning and stuff at damn sight more than offices closing down and changing into a different type of business.
Mm-hmm. This is going to be like what happened to the Docklands when the container ships were introduced and they stopped going all the way up to the Thames River, almost to the Pool of London. The Docklands became a deserted space. Well, actually, the funny bit is that the Docklands is where Canary Wharf is.
Right.
Worst case scenario just happens again, and then at some point in the history of mankind, it becomes fashionable to be in Canary Wharf again.
Yeah, there's always a macro trend that's going to make fundamental changes, but it will always rebirth into a revised version of what it was, and the winds are so strong for everyone. One of the other things I forgot to mention, but in talking about this work from home, let's not forget people who, it's always so important to get kind of women, back into the workforce, and having that flexibility of working from home changes the dynamic for a lot of women who are, have other commitments that stop them being at work all the time. Those people with disability, where companies saying, well, we'd love to, but we need someone in the office. It'd be too difficult to work out. Well, they were wrong, because that person can work from home just like anyone else can work from home, right? And so I think it's a wonderful leveler that gives more people a chance who should have always had a chance. And the whole commitment to you should come in and sit at that desk, to have a manager stare over your shoulder, that was always a false model. I've always managed my teams through their outcomes, and if they're achieving their outcomes, and they want to have a morning off to go and do something, I don't care. They achieved what I needed them to achieve, and they did a really good job, and they work hard. And at the same time, if I need them to work over, they work over a bit, because we all work on kind of common goals, and it would be nice, wouldn't it, if everyone worked like that rather than clock watching and having a manager over your shoulder.
Well, I still think that we are in this kind of category of people that actually can work from any place as long as they have a computer. But a lot of people, they can't do that, right? They need to be at a specific place to do their work, which I totally...
changes, right? So we had some horrible models of shared localized offices and things like that. And a lot of that may come to the fore as well. But no, of course, it's not right for everyone. But it's really just the fact that everyone now realizes that there should be a range of options and that they're all okay. Right? That's the important.
As you said, it's going to be a leveler, especially when you have a workforce and you can have someone from France instead of working in the UK because they are, well, France, Germany, whatever, they're at the same time zone. They can work together. You don't need someone to relocate because probably they can live on their own kind of, let's say, city in France or in the Netherlands or whatever, because they have fast connectivity and they can work from wherever they want. I think it's going to be easier for people to actually work like this. And as a manager, they need to actually look at ways that they qualify work and give goals and look at that, and also at the communication that they're having. I think that having this kind of communication through video is quite good, but having a proper written communication between people, I think that we need to improve that way more than actually just do more video or whatever, because that's going to be the basis of how everything if you're going to start doing more remote work. For the last topic, because I know that this half an hour has been quite fast. So the last topic is about what is it? An article from Technology Review, MIT.
The lockdown provider.
Exactly. So it's about the lockdown has been the longest period of quiet in recorded human history. It's been so quiet in the city. I live in East London, near the city, well, across the city airport. It was just the beginning of this week I noticed that the planes are returning to the airport. It's been months without no plane, and right now I just what the hell of this noise? This is so annoying. Can it just stop? So before that, I never noticed that there was a lot of planes. Right now, I can actually notice that there's a couple of planes landing. Do you think that we should promote this more kind of quiet periods in our human history even more, or is it just once in a lifetime?
You know, I mean, hey, we're dealing with AI and ethics and all the rest of it. Let's throw in climate change. It's such an important topic. And the constant pushback on these things, like the work from home, is no, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. Well, it did work, right? No, we have to fly this much all the time. You didn't, and it was fine, right? So nobody can ever say again that we can't possibly make the changes that we need to make in order to tackle the issues associated with climate change. We just can't say that anymore. There's not a claim. In fact, even if you look at the levels of spending that the various governments and federations around the world have been spending on propping up the economies, right? And you think, well, before this, that's the kind of money that they're saying couldn't possibly be made available to tackle climate change, right? Well, it could. We found it. We found the money. Might be hard to find it again, but we found the money, right? But we just kept saying, we can't do this, we can't do this, we can't do this. Well, we did. And it was good, right? And we saw all these amazing benefits. I'm loving reading the various science reports of, the impacts of the quiet period. Really, really positive things. There's a couple of negatives in there, like obviously in the lockdown culture, individuals weren't as prone to be concerned about their ecological choices. Okay, that's not great, but okay. I think it will be the saddest thing if we actually go back to normal, i.e., we go back to doing everything exactly the same as we were before this started. I think that would just be the biggest missed opportunity the human race has seen. It's an opportunity now that we know that a lot of those common stated beliefs were false. It's an opportunity to go back to a better version of normal, where we just make some better choices about how we rebuild our economies, rebuild our activities, both personal and industrial, to be better aligned to these huge ecological concerns that we have.
Good.
Indeed. And to solve the problem of the London underground that was hot as hell, and mostly because the clay that was keeping the underground quite fresh for the last 40 years or 50 years, and suddenly the clay was absorbing all the heat from the underground, and they realized that it was becoming incredibly hot. And now they are going to invest all this money on air conditioning, retrofitting that into the tunnels themselves, which was a huge proposition. I'm actually quite curious to know what happened to that. One of the things that I asked was, what happens if we actually stop the underground running for a full month? Does the temperature go down? Do we actually gain a decade in terms of temperature management in the underground? I think we're doing the same experiment on a global scale. If we add that the added awareness from Greta Thunberg, I believe that 2019 and 2020 was probably one of the best years for the environment.
Well,
I just fail to see exactly if we're going to follow up on that.
Well, maybe. I see a lot of plastic in the streets, which is not good, especially the masks. But the other thing is, I think that London gained a new wind tunnel. I think it's getting windier in London because of the Crossrail, because no one is using it, and it goes from west to east, and because it's closed. It's a big wind tunnel over there, and I don't think that thing will ever open, ever. I just lost my hope. Because I live close to the entrance of the Crossrail, and I was hoping the Crossrail to be open 2 years ago, and it's not even the next year. I don't know when those guys are going to open the Crossrail, which is a shame. Either way,
they should turn it into a shopping mall
and just remove the tracks and put the lime scooters over there, or bird, so that people can actually cross the city with that and do some races. Either way, right. Richard, we're out of topic. Also, a lot of time on top of this, of the previous one that we have been discussing, and it was a pleasure having you here on our little show, especially to talk about, well, AI and climate change, which is kind of fun. Thank you very much. I hope that we can talk soon, and I can actually see you again. It's been a while, and we need to do this kind of conversations more often. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good. And for the people that are watching us, we're gonna return next Wednesday with another guest at the same time, 9:30 p.m. On YouTube, Facebook, on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.